Let me explain to you what moral relativism is: the belief that there's no such thing as right and wrong, and any absolute right and wrong. What's right for you is right for you. It doesn't have to be right for me, and vice versa. Okay? That's moral relativism. Now, the fact of the matter is, God, the only true God, the only God that exists, is a moral God. And He created human beings in His image. So we are moral people. We are moral beings. So you can deny that there's absolute moral laws, you just can't live that way. Everybody makes moral value judgments, okay? And here's why moral relativism is self-refuting, okay? It shoots itself in the foot. The moral relativists are telling Christians, look, you can't call my actions, there's no such thing as right and wrong, therefore you can't call my actions wrong, and you're wrong for calling my actions wrong. Okay? No, if there's no such thing as right and wrong, then you can never call Christians wrong, because we're never wrong. Now, we say that the actions of a homosexual, for instance, or an adulterer, or a bank robber, we say that their actions are wrong, but that's consistent with Christianity because we believe there is such a thing as right and wrong. So that it's okay for us to say it's wrong to just teach evolution in the public schools. But when the moral relativists say it's wrong to teach creationism in the public schools, they're contradicting their own view. Look, there's no such thing as right and wrong. Then they go take it a step further. There's no such thing as absolute truth. What's true for you is true for you. It doesn't have to be true for me, and vice versa. Therefore, it's wrong to teach the falsehoods of creationism in the public schools. Look, if there's no such thing as truth and falsehood, creationism isn't false. And if there's no such thing as right and wrong, it's not wrong for Christians to want to have some say in the public schools. After all, they're being taxed to support those public schools. So moral relativism is self-refuting. It says there's no such thing as wrong, therefore Christians are wrong for calling my actions wrong. No, if there's no such thing as wrong, Christians are never wrong, leave us alone. So that's moral relativism. So what happens with moral relativism, it's so inconsistent, it actually, while they deny God's moral absolutes like the Ten Commandments, okay, while they reject God's moral absolutes and they say there's no absolutes, in reality, they end up inventing new absolutes, okay? So a book I'd recommend, it's called The New Morality by William Watkins. He's got like about 10 chapters with the old commandments and then the new moral absolutes that have replaced them. So nowadays, it's not like, you know, it's not like they walk up to you and say, oh, you're a Christian? Well, I'm glad that's good for you. Okay, I'm really happy for you that you think Christianity is true and you like Christianity. It's just not right for me. But I'm happy for you. Well, those days are gone. Relativism is being thrown out the window for the new absolutes. So now, oh, you're a Christian? I didn't know you were an intolerant bigot. I didn't know you were homophobic. I didn't know you were a gay basher. I didn't know that somebody I knew actually believes in those old fairy tales and things of that sort. So now, all of a sudden, it's not what's right for you or what's true for you is right or true for you, but it doesn't have to be for me and vice versa. Now, Christianity and God's absolutes are positively evil. Everything's been reversed. Now, I'm a little bit concerned about this new morality, because of passages like Isaiah 5:20, Isaiah 5:20, I'm actually turning to Romans 1:32 because I'm going to read that one. But Isaiah 5:20, God's about to judge Judah, okay? And they're really messing up and they're stepping outside of God's will. And God's ticked off at them, and he decides to start passing judgment on them. And God says, woe to those who call evil good and good evil. Okay? We're living in those days. You know, that's what political correctness is. So now, did God judge Judah? You bet. Babylonian invasion, you know, they got stomped on. God's going to judge America if America doesn't repent. But we are now calling good evil and evil good. I remember even a few years back, a pastor out of Buffalo, New York, was leading a peaceful protest on public sidewalks against abortion, and they held up in a formaldehyde jar the corpse of a fetus that had been aborted. Okay? Well, the pro-abortionists who showed up, one of them went into a demonic rage and knocked the jar out of the pro-lifer's hand. It fell on the ground and cracked open, and there was the body of this baby. So a reporter from CNN interviewed the pastor. And you know, the first question she asked the pastor was, don't you think what you're doing borders on terrorism? And this is what the pastor did, because he was the pro-life guy. And they're killing babies before they're born, and this pastor says that's wrong. See, look, this is a baby. This isn't tissue. This is a human being. And the CNN reporter says, don't you think what you're doing borders on terrorism? And he took a step back and just shook his head in disbelief, like, are you asking me this, or are you asking the pro-abortionist? So you can slaughter babies before they're born, and that's okay. That's just a woman's right over her body, okay? But if you protest abortion and you show evidence that it is murder, you're bordering on terrorism there. A Catholic priest, Father Pavone, he's getting slammed in the media because he keeps referring to Mike Shivo as a murderer for killing his wife. Well, you see, his wife wasn't dying. And Mike Shivo fought it in the courts and got the federal courts to rule. First the Florida state courts, and eventually, I don't think the federal courts even touched it, but whatever the case, it came back to where the court ordered starvation. It took, what, 15 days for her to starve to death. And the media is talking to this Father Pavone and saying, now, you know, there needs to be some healing here. You've got to stop using those harsh words. And this Father Pavone doesn't even raise his voice. And so they're asking this Catholic priest. I got a lot of theological differences with them, okay? I'm not Catholic. But they're asking this Catholic priest, don't you know how evil it is to hurt another human being's feelings? So why don't you, so what they're basically, they don't even realize it, but they're asking him, please change your definition of murder so you don't hurt Mike Shivo's feelings. You know what? I agree with Father Pavone on this one. I could care less about Mike Shivo's feelings. Now, I did care about the well-being and the health of his wife, whom he was allowed to kill.